Making headlines first at 9 tonight. Officials suspended. A senior manager of Employees Provident Fund suspended after recent revelations on bond transactions.
First at 9. This is Derana 24/7.
Also making headlines tonight, fighting dengue continues. Government commences national operation together with media institutions, with the epidemic claiming 230 lives. Inland Revenue Act. As opposition mounts on recent amendments, Finance Minister Mangala Samaravira clarifies that only tax system was simplified. Making headlines in news overseas, 16 service members killed in military plane crash in Mississippi. Good evening. First at 9, this is your prime time news on Derana 24/7. I'm Indivri Amuatta. We begin with developments on the ongoing investigations into the controversial bond issuance. Additional Solicitor General Dappula de Oliveira today informed the Commission of Inquiry probing the controversial bond issuance that senior manager of the Employees Provident Fund, Saman Kumara, was interdicted yesterday. Saman Kumara, who was a dealer for the EPF, was under media scrutiny recently following the revelation that primary dealer Perpetual Treasuries had transacted with the EPF through Pan Asia Banking Corporation. During the Commission's sitting on Wednesday last week, it was revealed that the Employees Provident Fund had purchased Treasury bonds and bills from Perpetual Treasuries through Pan Asia Bank at a higher rate. It was noted that Saman Kumara did not take any action to avert losses incurred to the EPF through these transactions.
Additional Solicitor General Dappula de Oliveira, however, did not reveal the reasons behind the central bank's decision to interdict Saman Kumara, senior manager of Employees Provident Fund. Saman Kumara later arrived at the Commission's premises to record a statement with CID officials affiliated to the Presidential Commission. Meanwhile, at today's sitting of the Commission of Inquiry, Deputy General Manager of the Treasury Department of Pan Asia Banking Corporation, Aruna Benedict Dias, appeared for a fourth consecutive day. He was cross-examined by President's Counsel Kalinga Indrathissa, who represents former Director of Perpetual Treasuries, Arjun Aloysius. Focusing on the alleged WhatsApp calls made by Aloysius to Aruna Benedict Dias, it was revealed today the two individuals had not conversed with each other since Dias was summoned as a witness before the Commission of Inquiry. The Commission's attention was also directed to the meeting between Aloysius and Dias on the 30th of June. Deputy General Manager of Treasury Department of PABC said he agreed to meet with Arjun Aloysius as Aloysius had pleaded to do so and he himself had certain doubts to clarify.
The much-debated topic on the introduction of a new constitution drew various opinion across the country today. Let's take a look at a few excerpts.
The chapter disagree with the statement by the chief prelate of the Askira chapter. Some clergy of the Malwatu chapter too do not accept this. Some say the expectation of 6.2 million people should be fulfilled and not what the chief prelate of the Askira chapter says. The power of the Mahasangha goes beyond 6.2 million. The government has to accept what they say. If they don't listen to them, they will either have to leave the process of constitution making or give up power. Prepare the constitution and hand it over to the chief prelates. Let them go through it and advise accordingly. The government has promised the international community the constitution will be changed. The UNP promised a new constitution in its election manifesto. We expect to bring this with the consent of Parliament and hope to pass it via a public referendum. The President's election manifesto pledges that nothing will be done to pave way for a referendum. Therefore, he was not given the mandate to bring a new constitution. I think that this government is not capable of bringing a new constitution. The UNP asked a public mandate to bring a new constitution, but they did not get it. The SLFP and the United People's Freedom Alliance did not ask for such a mandate.
Some people might say the war is over. What is the use of a new constitution now? But you must realize everyone in Sri Lanka did not support the war. There are lots of people who want to live in peace belonging to all communities.
The final report on the fairness of increasing fines for traffic violations was handed over to President Maithripala Sirisena by Secretary to the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation, Nihal Somavira, at the Presidential Secretariat today. The report was formulated by the committee appointed by the President to evaluate fines on road rule violations.
It was proposed through Budget 2017 to increase the minimum fine for violation of road rules to 25,000 rupees. However, due to opposition, President Maithripala Sirisena appointed a committee to look into the matter. The committee comprised Secretary to the Ministry of Finance Dr. R.H.S. Samarathunga, Secretary to the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation Nihal Somavira, Deputy Solicitor General of the Attorney General's Department Sobhita Rajakaruna, Commissioner General of the Motor Traffic A.H.K. Jagat Chandrasiri, and the Senior Deputy Inspector General of Police Nandana Munasinghe. Also at the Presidential Secretariat today, 3 newly appointed Court of Appeal judges were sworn in before President Maithripala Sirisena. Former High Court judges AAGR Amarasekara, A.L. Shiran Gunaratna and Senior Deputy Solicitor General of the Attorney General's Department Janaka De Silva took oath before President as new Appeal Court judges. Meanwhile, yesterday, addressing an event in Dehiyattakandiya, President Sirisena reiterated that clauses in the constitution on Buddhism and unitary state of the country will not be changed.
The Parliament has become a constitutional assembly to bring a new constitution. There are many subcommittees. Those subcommittees are preparing reports. We will table a report in Parliament combining those reports. A draft bill will then be prepared after considering all the elements. We will not make any changes in the constitution regarding the unitary status of the nation. We will also not make any changes in the constitution regarding Buddhism. The public are interested in a change to the constitution. It is the public consensus that an MP be elected to every division. Accordingly, we have given priority to a new electoral system.
Also making news tonight, retired Admiral Sat Veerasekara alleges the government is rushing the bill on International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance bill, falsely claiming the bill will not have an impact on incidents of the past. He expressed these views speaking at a media briefing convened by the Federation of National Organizations today.
Minister Mangala Samaravira has spoken about the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance bill. They withdrew this due to the influence of Mahasangha. He is questioning as to why we are scared of this, as it only affects the future. We question as to why they are rushing this if peace and good governance exists in the country. If a war starts in the country in the future, this bill will enable international communities of consensual governments to interfere. I ask Minister Mangala Samaravira not to lie to the public. Since we've been to Geneva, we know how much he betrayed us. This betrayal is far more worse than the betrayal of the Kandyan Convention.
We have more local news coming up after this short break. Do stay with us. As the menace of dengue sweeps across the island, Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government Faiza Mustafa says institutional heads will be held accountable for mosquito breeding sites and they will be brought to book. The government, meanwhile, plans to launch a special program to curb dengue together with the media institutions.
According to the Epidemiology Unit of the Ministry of Health, the dengue epidemic has claimed over 230 lives so far this year, with the total number of dengue cases rising to over 84,000. 2 school children aged 9 and 14 from Mathura and Kandy respectively were the latest victims of the dengue virus. Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government Faiza Mustafa called for active participation by school principals, students, teachers and parents in combating dengue.
At present, what we see after most dengue raids today is that a labourer or a minor staff member is produced before court, not the head of the institution. That individual pays the fine, but the institution relapses back into the same state. Under this situation, we have decided to file cases directly against heads of institutions, including heads of schools. Before we embark on this process, however, we will give a period of 2 weeks to rectify the shortcomings in schools as much as possible. We see that some leading schools believe they are exempt from raids purely because of their prominence. Our aim, however, is not to oppress principals.
Local authorities have launched various programs to combat the dengue epidemic, and fumigation is underway at several locations deemed likely to be mosquito breeding havens. Schools, public places and homes in Kerawalapitiya in Vattala were subjected to fumigation today by officials of the Ministry of Health. Meanwhile, the Government Medical Officers Association alleges that the Ministry of Health is concealing true statistics on dengue patients and deaths, lulling the public into a false sense of security.
Today there is a hyper-epidemic situation in most parts of the country. When a patient reported to a hospital, the hospital authorities there should notify the case to the medical officer of health where the patient is residing, so that the medical officers of health can initiate dengue control activities rapidly. Ministry of Health is not promoting the notification process, and therefore the system is severely disrupted. When you see the data in the epidemiology unit website, the total number of cases reported from Colombo districts in June was 5,259. But up to now, 10 days have gone, only 498 patients have been reported from Colombo district. This is totally wrong. We urge the minister and the authorities not to mislead the public and take appropriate action so that dengue control measures will be implemented in a scientific manner. Otherwise, there will be dengue epidemic for next 2-3 months.
As the latest measure to combat dengue at domestic level, a special discussion was held today at the Department of Government Information on the program titled Let's Initiate Eradication of Dengue. A live television program will be telecast tomorrow on this national undertaking from 9 to 11 a.m. on TV Derana as well as Other Derana 24/7. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization's report on the eradication of dengue in Sri Lanka was submitted to the Minister of Health, Nutrition and Indigenous Medicine, Dr. Rajat Sanada today.
With the Archaeological Advisory Board deciding to close the Dambulla Cave Temple for conservation work, the trustee of the temple, Venerable Amagaswava Rahula Thera, emphasizes that they will not let the complex remain closed.
Following the statement by Minister of Education Akila Viraj Karyavasam alleging fraud at the Dambulla Cave Temple complex, Mahasangha of the Asgiri chapter responded recently saying that the statement was an insult. They also accused the government of an attempt to bring the temple under the Department of Archaeology. The Department of Archaeology, however, refuted the allegation and said they just want to conserve the temple complex. Convening a media briefing recently, Minister of Education Akila Viraj Karyavasam expressed his views on the matter.
The income of the temple is approximately 2 to 8 million rupees. The Commissioner of Buddhist Affairs should also be responsible for this. I think the officers are responsible for this as well. Am I wrong to take action as a minister of the government? We are accused of taking over collection boxes. These are deteriorating at the moment.
In such a backdrop, the Archaeological Advisory Board, which convened yesterday, decided to close the temple complex until further notice.
Although we took this decision yesterday, we didn't decide as to when we will close the temple. After discussing with the trustees of the temple, we will decide on the time period of the closure.
In the meantime, convening a media briefing today, the trustee of the temple, Venerable Amagaswava Rahula Thera, and clergy along with locals emphasized that they will not let anyone close the temple complex.
As the trustee of this temple, I have the power to either open or close this temple. No one can stop it. I request the Minister of Buddha Sasana and Commissioner of Buddhist Affairs to intervene and resolve this issue.
In the meantime, Senior Working Committee member of the Sangha Sabha of the Asgiri chapter, Venerable Dr. Godagama Mangala Thera, also convened a media briefing in Kandy today.
මේ විහාරස්ථානය දැනට පාලනය වන්නේ
At the moment, this temple is administered by a trustee Thera appointed by the Commissioner of Buddhist Affairs under the Vihara Devala Gam Act. I got to know from the Commissioner of Buddhist Affairs in Kandy that the consultation board has no legal provisions to take decisions exceeding his powers.
Alliance Bandulu Gunawardena alleges that the government is planning to privatize the Inland Revenue Department. He expressed these views during a media briefing in Colombo today.
The Chief Minister of the Western Province says that they are going to impose tax on deserted and polluted land. According to the Article 148 of the Constitution, the Parliament has the power to impose tax. They amended the Inland Revenue Act. 44 pages which describes provisions of the tax exemptions have been removed, and then only you will realize its direct effect to the sectors like agriculture, exports and Employees Provident Fund. The former Minister of Finance Ravi Karunanayake presented this following the agenda of the IMF. The tax ratio of the Employees Provident Fund has been increased up to 14% from 10%. According to this act, the beneficiaries of the EPF will have to pay taxes. They are also going to appoint a Commissioner General to the Inland Revenue Department with unlimited power. He will have the power to appoint outsiders as well. They have created the atmosphere which will lead to the privatization of the Inland Revenue Department. The government has intervened to suppress media. The government repeatedly states that media has created all these issues. Media do not create problems, but they only report what happens in the country, and the government does not want the true state of affairs revealed. The underworld is more powerful than the government.
Meanwhile, Minister of Finance and Mass Media Mangala Samaravira, during a discussion with representatives of trade unions of the Inland Revenue Department, stated that the main objective of the new Inland Revenue Bill is to simplify the tax system. The new system is expected to create an investor-friendly environment that will attract more direct foreign investments in the near future. The minister also explained that the existing tax system is complicated and that investors find it difficult to understand. Therefore, he emphasized that the new Inland Revenue Bill will broad-base the tax system and incorporate globally accepted tax principles to deal with international cross-border relations. Stay with your prime time news. First at 9, we'll return with more news. In your top business story tonight, head of the European Union delegation to Sri Lanka, Ambassador Tung Laimag, calls on the government of Sri Lanka to improve its standards and regulations if Sri Lanka is to have a robust exports sector. He was speaking to media at the Sri Lanka's second national symposium to develop a national export strategy in Colombo today.
The Ministry of Development Strategies and International Trade and the Sri Lanka Export Development Board will conduct a second consultation for Sri Lanka's national export strategy, which will act as a key component of the EU-Sri Lanka trade-related assistance, increasing SMEs' trade competitiveness in regional EU market.
I really believe that we need to see the strategy of yours, and of course Sri Lanka has to have the full ownership of this strategy being set up and in motion as soon as possible. But here we are speaking of another dimension. We are speaking of the capacity for your country to boost its export. And to be frank, I really believe that this country has got a tremendous potential. You have got the same means and the same capacities as other Asian countries, and therefore the focus on the private sector, together with the public sector, is the key to success. I also hope, obviously, that the benefits will be brought to everyone in this country and that it will not remain something at the high level of the society. It needs to be seen by people to bring them immediate and tangible benefits in their daily life.
The consultative meeting for the second national export strategy will commence tomorrow to define roadmaps for expanding exports and analyze performance of value chains for various key sectors. The 5-year strategy implementation period lays emphasis on diversification of exports through strengthening of emerging sectors.
We are now engaging in more in-depth analysis. Over the next 2 weeks, we will be holding consultations with the private sector The objective is to come up with a prioritized action plan which is focused and aiming really to say, okay, if Sri Lanka wants to go to this next level of export sophistication, here is what we need to do. And this will be based, again, on this public-private dialogue.
There's an increasing exports, it's marginal, but that's not enough. We are going to improve the existing exports, but we are going to introduce new exports. We need to move into electronics because after garments, after garment industries, normally countries move into electronics, electrical items. So we tell them to manufacture in Sri Lanka so that we have the markets tax-free to countries where we sign bilateral agreements, and then the European market. So the BOI will have power to give approvals within 2-3 months. So that's a problem because investors also don't want to come because it takes 2-3 years for them to get the approvals.
Affecting businesses in South Korea, the country's tourism body fears a huge drop in visitors as the diplomatic row with China starts to increase. The Korea Tourism Organization predicted there could be 4.7 million fewer foreign tourists this year than in 2016, a drop of about 27%. China has banned travel agencies from selling package tours to Korea in protest at Seoul allowing a U.S. missile defense system. Visitors from China made up almost 47% of tourists in South Korea last year. Still in international currency markets, according to a correlation analysis by Goldman Sachs Group, when it comes to havens among currencies, the yen is the safest of them all. Releasing a report yesterday, the group stated that Japan's currency aligns most closely against corresponding moves in global risk assets in the past decade. They compared daily and monthly fluctuations for a basket of 28 global floating, developed and developing market currencies across 2 5-year periods from 2007 to 2011 and 2011 to 2016. The yen showed the most consistent negative correlation to global stocks, U.S. oil prices and 10-year U.S. Treasury yields. And we take a look at how the Colombo Bourse and its equities performed during today. We have Imeshi Fernando with the daily market update.
The benchmark all-share price index lost 10.09 points to close at 6,748.15, while the S&P Sri Lanka 20 index gained 0.13 points to close at 3,904.45. The turnover was 559.72 million rupees, with 29.4 million shares changed in hands in 5,521 trades. The market capitalization at the end of the day was 3,060.62 billion rupees. Top 5 gainers of the day were Adam Capital, Serendip Engineering Group, Carson Cumberbatch, 3 Acre Farms and Abbas Electricals, while the top 5 losers were SNB Leasing, non-voting, Blue Diamonds, non-voting, Equity 2, Dilma Ceylon and SNB Leasing. Today's foreign purchases were 151.36 million rupees and foreign sales were 109.08 million rupees. There were 3 crossings today and the crossings turnover was 104.63 million rupees.
And the Sri Lankan rupee traded steady today. The spot rupee traded steady at 153 rupees and 73 cents to 80 cents per dollar, unchanged from Monday's close. So here's a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded across other major currencies during the day. And your sports stories will follow after this break. In sports, Minister of Sports Dayasiri Jayasekara says that the country needs a joint effort to solve issues surrounding cricket. He made these remarks at a function held in the Ministry of Sports today.
They attack me for the things I said. What I have to say is that we have to get together and we have to bring the team to the correct position. We have the talent and the potential, but at the same time, there is something lacking. Too many injuries happen consecutively. When such injuries take place, it's unbearable for a player. I think we have to look into these issues deeply. I believe we have to think of a new way to deal with the upcoming Test Series and the Tour of India.
ඉන්දියානු සංචාරය ගැන යම් අලුත් වැඩපිළිවෙලක් ගැන කල්පනා කරන්න වෙයි කියලා මම විශ්වාස කරනවා. පරාජයට ඒක ක්‍රීඩකයෝද පාලක මණ්ඩලයේද වෙන කවුරුද? නැති අපි සියලු දෙනාම වකින් බාර ගන්න ඕනේ.
All of us has to take the responsibility. We've been pushed to rethink. We have given all the facilities necessary. We cannot comment on the players' behavior within the field.
Headline-making story from across the world. 16 people have died after a U.S. military plane crashed in the southern state of Mississippi. The crash occurred about 100 miles north of state capital Jackson.
Local media said the plane came down in a field and left a 5-mile trail of debris. Officials say all 16 victims were on the Marine Corps aircraft and there were no survivors. No official details were immediately available on the circumstances of the crash, and the Marine Corps stated only that a U.S. Marines transport aircraft had experienced a mishap.
Still in international news, 7 Hindu pilgrims, including 6 women, were killed in a crossfire during a militant attack on police in Indian Kashmir yesterday. The pilgrims had been returning from a mountain shrine when the bus got caught up in the crossfire. The attack, which also left 19 injured, is likely to heighten tensions in the disputed region, although police insist the pilgrims had not been targeted. India accuses Pakistan of pushing in militants from its part of Kashmir to carry out attacks, a charge denied by Islamabad. That was your news tonight, but to take a look at how the weather will be for the next 24 hours, we cross over to Katrina Chang.
A very good evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. Now, the next 24 hours are said to be rather wet for the western Sabaragamu's central, southern and northwestern provinces. The Jaffna district may also expect intermittent showers over the course of the day. Meanwhile, people from the eastern, Uva and north central provinces should brace themselves for rain accompanied by strong gusts of wind of over 50 kilometers per hour. It's now time to take a look at the city by city forecast.
That wraps up your First at 9 broadcast, but as usual, here are visuals of the urban wetland park in Navala, a rare green space within bustling Colombo. People gather to the park to relax and enjoy the beauty of the nature. We leave you with these visuals. Have a pleasant evening and stay safe. Good night.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.